Do you have any words of encouragement to maybe colleagues or even people in other industries? We're seeing students, airline employees, government employees, people right across the board who are in the same situation, who are facing termination. And given the number of people we're hearing these stories from, I think it's more than people realize. Do you have any words of encouragement for those people who are in the same situation?
I believe that as science is evolving and more scientists and doctors are speaking up, we will probably see that vaccine mandates and vaccine passports will inevitably have to be coming to an end, and we can return to our regular happy lives.
It's really remarkable that the union's not doing anything, right? You pay your union dues, and the union doesn't do anything for you when you face a job termination. But they'll go and grieve a termination related to an employee who's not been pulling their weight for the past 5 years, but they won't grieve somebody who's sitting at home doing a good job.
Adam Sos here for Rebel News, and today I will be sharing with you the story of one airline employee that we are able to help thanks to your generosity at fightvaccinepassports.com. Through that initiative and because of your donations, we are able to launch 20 strategic lawsuits across Canada to help people and to share stories like the story I'm about to share with you today. We're keeping the name of this client confidential, and we're going to obstruct her identity as best we can in an attempt to safeguard her work. But she is one of the many people who may potentially lose out on employment because of their vaccine status. Her story is one that we thought you absolutely had to hear because she has been working for an airline company for decades, and for over 10 years she has worked from home. Despite this, they are insisting that she be vaccinated, even though she does not interact with people through her work at all and has not for 10 years. If that wasn't crazy enough, worse still, she had COVID during the first wave and has tested positive for the antibodies. So we have lab confirmed antibodies. So this is a natural immunity case. She is willing to do rapid testing. She's willing to go through any other measures, but because of her natural immunity, she feels it unreasonable that she should be vaccinated, and she is therefore refusing. So we're going to gather some of her story and sit down with her to get her perspective. After that, we're going to go to Sarah Miller of JSS Barristers, who has been provided at no cost to this client to help her defend her livelihood, for a little bit about the legal perspective on how we're helping this client.
All right, so thank you so much for joining me, obviously, to conceal your identity, to help protect your employment. We won't be shooting your face for those who are wondering at home. We just wanted to first off touch base, get some of your story. You are one of the many people across Canada who are potentially facing a loss of employment because you're unwilling to be vaccinated. If you could maybe tell us first off, just to give people a little bit of a sense of your story, when this all started and when you thought these vaccine passports and mandates might affect you personally.
So the vaccine mandate was announced by my airline on 25th of August, and the deadlines given for the first dose or reporting at least the first dose were 8th of September, and the second dose had to be reported by, or had to be administered at least on 16th of September, and reported by 30th of October.
So there's a number of interesting considerations when it comes to your story. First off, there's the fact that you had COVID, and you do have natural immunity that's been confirmed by lab testing. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yes, I had COVID in the very first wave in March 2020. I actually contracted it from a coworker at work, and yes, I was considered a COVID survivor. I did really well. Took some vitamins, took some supplements, plenty of liquids, plenty of rest. And I believe that I was safe. I had immunity. And when the vaccine mandate was announced, very next day, upon recommendation from my doctor, I went to get tested for spike protein antibodies, and a couple days later I had my result, and I scored positive for these antibodies, and it was also a semi-quantitative test that showed that I have a high level of antibodies.
So you've got the antibodies, so there's a pretty reasonable medical reason not to need a vaccine as well. You've proven that as well. But additionally, beyond this, and I think what most people will probably find troubling, is the nature of your work. You've been working from home, is that right?
That's correct. For about the past 10 years, I've had a position that allowed me to work from home, on the phone, on the computer. Yes, absolutely.
And so we mentioned this, we talked about this before, you're staying at home, so you're isolated, you're not being exposed to people on a daily basis. You're also willing to undergo rapid testing. You've been going through these protocols. You're happy to take part in that, but they're not giving you any reasonable accommodation. They're basically saying get vaccinated or get out. Is that right?
Yes, unfortunately, there are no other options offered, no exceptions for natural immunity, even though my doctor offered to take a regular blood test that shows persistent antibody level. I'm willing to get tested, PCR test, rapid test on a regular basis or when needed. Unfortunately, that is not given as an option.
And it's a story we're seeing time and time again. Unfortunately, you're not alone. Thousands of Canadians, even people within the airline industry, are facing the same types of struggles. You're willing to do all these things, willing to compromise, willing to meet them halfway, and they're saying, no, it's our way or the highway, unfortunately. How long have you been with roughly Air Canada? How long have you been a unionized employee with them?
I've been with my airline for over 20 years now. A long time, long career.
Yeah. So over 20 years of loyal service, no major issues. Suddenly the terms and conditions change. You're willing to meet them halfway and they're not willing to do that. What does it feel like? And I'm sure you're not alone. I'm sure there's other people that you've probably spoken with, maybe coworkers. What does it feel like to have all that work, that career after 20 plus years at risk of evaporating simply because of your medical privacy?
Oh, yeah, it's a really, really bad feeling. It's really tough mentally because it's almost imminent in a few days. I and many others will be put on personal leave with no benefits, no pay. I believe for at least 6 months. And at the end of 6 months, they will look at whether they keep us or not. We're hoping they keep us, but it's possible that we could be terminated.
And for those people, I think anyone reasonably minded will say, well, you're working at home anyways. You've got the immunity. You're willing to do testing. That's enough compromise for most reasonable people. What do you say to the people out there who are vilifying people who are not willing to be vaccinated? They're not looking at the human side of the story. They're not thinking about you and the thousands of other Canadians who've lost often multi-decade careers or may lose them. What do you say to those people who vilify you and don't see you as a human being?
Well, the COVID has been with us for a year and a half, over a year and a half. I have been a COVID survivor at the beginning. Everybody would agree with me that I am immune. I've been immune. I've been a safe person to be around. And as this pandemic progresses and variants emerge, we're seeing with the Delta variant that actually even vaccinated people are affected now. They are getting infected and they can spread the disease and they can even be hospitalized. I look at the statistics on the Alberta government website, and right now it's showing that 30% of all new cases are actually among fully vaccinated. And this has been translating to the hospitalizations as well. So it seems like this is a contagious variant, and people may be getting it, everybody may get it, and people may be spreading it. once they get that natural immunity that is equally good as vaccinated immunity or better, that's what perhaps will put this pandemic behind us.
And I think many people will appreciate you're not denying there's COVID. You've been through COVID. You're not denying the potential efficacy of vaccines. You're saying you have natural immunity, and that is as good, if not better. I think many people out there will appreciate that it's a very measured and reasonable response. I guess finally, just before we go, do you have any words of encouragement to maybe colleagues or even people in other industries? We're seeing students, airline employees, government employees, people right across the board who are in the same situation, who are facing termination. And given the number of people we're hearing these stories from, I think it's more than people realize. Do you have any words of encouragement for those people who are in the same situation?
I believe that as science is evolving and more scientists and doctors are speaking up, we will probably see that vaccine mandates and vaccine passports will inevitably have to be coming to an end, and we can return to our regular happy lives.
Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. We're going to continue and touch base with you as the legal proceedings move forward. We're going to meet with Sarah Miller very soon to discuss the legal proceedings and how we're going to be acting on your behalf. But thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
And thank you very much for representing me.
Happy to do so. Thank you.
So as I mentioned, I am now here with Sarah Miller of JSS Barristers, who will be providing us with a bit of an update on the legal component of this Air Canada case. So if you could maybe just let us know the nature of the case, kind of what the plan is moving forward.
So for background there, Air Canada has initiated a vaccine policy mandating all of their employees to be vaccinated. Our prospective client, or our client I should say, not prospective, is working from home and very there's really no reason for her to be vaccinated. She's also got natural immunity. She's had COVID previously. So we have asked the union to argue against the vaccine policy. The union has just straight up refused. I mean, they've given us non-answers. They've not done anything for anyone, frankly, who's a unionized employee at Air Canada. So the next step now is to launch a complaint against the Canada Industrial Relations Board to hopefully get that board to order the union to do something for these employees who are facing this mandate.
And when we spoke with the client, like she'd mentioned, over 10 years working from home, basically in isolation by default, not being subjected to other people, also tested and confirmed antibodies for COVID. She also mentioned that she was willing to go through other protocols, do rapid testing. She's willing to do just about everything except for this one thing, and all she's seeking is some reasonable accommodations. Is there any grounds under which they're offering any reasonable accommodations, or are they just steadfast and not making any exceptions?
So Air Canada is deciding that they're, as far as we've heard so far, they're not giving exceptions. We have not heard from anybody at Air Canada yet that they've actually gotten an exemption due to a medical reason or otherwise. So that, and until that happens, until we hear of somebody, we're not in contact with every Air Canada employee, but it seems from our perspective that Air Canada is not offering any kind of option besides just getting vaccinated, which when you're working from home and otherwise following public health mandates can be a difficult thing to face, loss of employment. And it's really remarkable that the union's not doing anything, right? You pay your union dues, and the union doesn't do anything for you when you face a job termination. But they'll go and grieve a termination related to an employee who's not been pulling their weight for the past 5 years, but they won't grieve somebody who's sitting at home doing a good job.
And that's something certainly we've seen unions across the board not going to bat for their employees on this specific issue. Seemingly they forget that they're supposed to be agents for the people who pay them union dues every month, and that's evaporated. So a letter will be sent, and hopefully there's some action there. Is there a plan moving forward from that, or is that kind of we wait and see?
So we're going to file a complaint with the regulatory board that looks over the unions for federal unions. So we're going to, it's a regulatory complaint procedure. We'll file the complaint. It will be heard by the board at some point, and hopefully the board will direct the union to take action here.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thanks again for the update, and we'll continue to follow the story as it unfolds. As always, I'd like to thank Sarah Miller for providing us with that legal analysis on this. I also particularly want to thank this brave airline employee for coming forward with her story. For every story that we are able to tell, there are thousands of people in the same circumstances, so it's important. People out there need to know that they're not alone. These particular stories, though, will become legal cases where we are going to bat and hopefully setting precedent for others who are in the same situation. This is a vital time in this fight. I want to encourage all of you to go to fightvaccinepassports.com right away. Check out the stories and check out the fights that we are fighting on the behalf of Canadians across this country who have had enough with vaccine passports. There's also an opportunity there for you to sign our petition, as well as to contribute to our legal battles in defense of fundamentally Canadian values like freedom and medical privacy. As always, I want to thank you all for tuning in. For Rebel News, I'm Adam Sos. The airline industry has been the center of a great deal of negative attention since the onset of COVID-19, with flight cancellations and no refunds being given to mass layoffs. The news has not been good, and that negativity seems to be continuing moving forward with vaccine passports. It is not only clients and customers who will be excluded from air travel, but now the employees of the airlines themselves facing potential termination based on their vaccination status.